Kia ora tātou, me timata tēnei hui mā te karakia. Takina te kawa ki te kauwairunga, te aiotanga āhuru mōwai. Te pūaro tipua, te pūaro tawhito, te pūaro whatukura, te pūaro maraikura. Takina te kawa ki te kauwairaro, mauri ora ki te whenua te one tapu I kura waka, te pūtakitanga o te ira tangata, whakatō te kākano, pihei mauri ora. He mihi tuatahi ki ngā mate huhua o te wā, ki tēnā marae, ki tēnā marae. E te hunga mate rātou ki a rātou, e te hunga ora tātou ki a tātou. Tēnā koutou katoa. E ngā muka tangata ko rangi tāmero tēnā I tā tātou kaupapa hui a kai manawa, nei rā te mihi ki a koutou. Nau mai, hara mai ki tēnei hui topa, I runga I te manaakitanga o te Rau Hihiri me iPens. Ko te kaupapa kei mua I a tātou, ko te kōrero Piriahi a te rangatira. He momo, ask me anything, hui, I raro I te tikanga o te āhuru mōwai. Ko Elaina Higginson tōku ingoa, he uri no ngā puhi nui tonu, he tarati o te Rau Hihiri. And e te whānau, it's awesome that you've joined us online today for this special kaupapa. We have 3 stunning rangatira who have made it into the room, which is just epic. And they're gathered around the glowing embers of this virtual bonfire. And we've crowdsourced some pātai from you all to ask of them today. And I just want to do a big shout out to those who took the time and opportunity to send us some of the pātai through. And if you have pātai e hoa mā that you've been sitting on for a little wee while and wondering about, please use the Q&A feature in the webinar and jot those down, and hopefully we have some time at the end. I know we're short on time now, but we'll see how we go e hoa mā. And we've also got kara from Te Rau Hihiri who may be able to answer a few pātai and point you in the direction of Tauimi and those sorts of things. We also have our normal chat function e hoa mā, and we've seen some people already sharing their kia oras and their tēnā koutou, so thank you everybody, and use that chat liberally as well. So before we get into our kōrero, I just want to acknowledge the āhuatanga that I know many of you are experiencing at the moment. The challenges, the uncertainty, disruption, taumahatanga, and for some, some sadness across our tari within the public service. I recently took the option of voluntary redundancy from my mahi. And as a whānau, we're making a few adjustments while we figure out our next steps. And the anxiety for me is real. But I'm also finding comfort in a strange kind of way, just knowing that there are heaps of other people on the same journey as me. It means when I'm checking in with my mates and looking for support and advice, they're kind of working with me from the same level. So, nō reira e te whānau, I just want to mihi to you all, kia kaha, kia maia, kia manawa nui. The backdrop to our webinar today is a hui that took place out at Waifetu on the 13th of January. Nā te Āti Awa te karanga I tuku. O tira, he mihi nui ki a rātou. Around 300 Māori public servants rocked up to Waifetu on a Saturday off their own bat. And they, together with iwi members, we wānanga, we kōrero all around manaakitanga and whanaungatanga. Many ideas were shared at that hui, and one of the low-hanging fruit that we thought we would tackle was around sharing information. There was kōrero about the kind of some widespread uncertainty, a lack of clear communication within organisations or from the centre, all contributing to feelings of confusion and instability. There was a particular concern raised for our younger members of the public service, those who perhaps this is the first sort of challenge and change that they've gone through early in their careers. So there was a call e hoa mā for clarity, acknowledgement and support. We're extremely grateful today to have our rangatira who graciously accepted the tono and agreed to join us to help fill in some of those gaps and really just to share their whakaaro with us all. So I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to ask each of our rangatira to introduce themselves, and I'll add in an icebreaker pātai. How was your wairua? We'll start with Lil, then we'll pass on to Janice, and then on to Paula. Kaya koe, Lil.
Mauri ora e te whānau, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei rā, ko Lil Anderson a hau, he uri a hau no te rārua, no Pangaru, no Hokianga whakapau karakia, ko au te tumu whakarau mō te arawhiti, tēnā koe Elaina, really great to be here. My wairua, that's a great question. My wairua today when I'm sitting here talking to all of you is lifted. but I think I'm tired. It's been a long few months lately, but also feeling very positive about the contribution I think I can make, both in the public service, but also to support other public servants going through really tough times at the moment. So really great to be here and look forward to our kōrero today.
Kia ora, Lil. Kai a koe, Janice. You're on mute, e hoa. Just come off mute, e hoa, please. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa. Tero ki taku tau kei hia rā kei hia. Kei ronga ke, kei raro ke, kei roto I taku moe moe a. E mihi ana ki ahau ki te whare e tū nei. Te whenua e takoto nei. Nā kaikaranga me te taumata, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ki ngā mate moe mai rā, moe mai rā. Ko puhanga tōhora, rawa ko whakatiri nā maunga. Ko manaakitanga, rawa ko wairua nā awa. Ko nā tuki mata whaurua tuku waka. Ko ukorohi, rawa ko maungarongo nā marae. Ko nai te wake, nā ui one rawa ko te parawhau, ko uriroroi nā hapu. Ko nā puhi nui tonu rawa ko Ngāti Whātua nā iwi, ko Cyril Pānoho rawa mate Dalton o ku matua. Ko Janice Pānoho tōku ingoa, ki te tautoko te kaupapa o tēnei wā, o ko au te kaihautu Māori o te pukinga here te kaimahi. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Yes, it's a good question about my wairua. I think we've been all on a treadmill at the moment, going at 100 miles an hour, trying to actually, I think, more about in terms of looking at the future, but this government has, I believe they've taken 10 steps backwards in terms of the progress that Māori have made across the public service. And at the moment, I went to a whānau hui, our Te Whanawata Whai Hui in last week in Wellington of our Māori staff. And I think that was uplifting because we needed to come together and look at in terms of the devastation that is happening across the public service in terms of some of the major initiatives that we've made and progress over years being taken away. So we are up for the challenge. We are organising around in terms of our responses to this government. We are also in the media. We are meeting with ministers, and we've met last week with the public service leadership team, Te Kaua Mataho. So I think it's important that we are there to support our members, our Māori members, and in terms of what's happening to them at the moment across the public service. So that's my whakaaro to our members today and to the workers at across the public service. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Janice. Tēnā koe te rangatira. Kai a koe, Paula.
Rero rangatira mā tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tongariro tōku maunga, ko tauponui āti tōku moana, ko te heoheo te tangata. Ko ngā tirangi I te kōku, ko tū te mahuta o ku hapu, ko taupo tōku tiranga waiwai, kei ngā roa wāhia tōku kāinga, ko pola rāwari tōku ingoa. Nei rā, kumihi mai aha ki a koe, Alaina nau, ko koe te arawhata ki te rongarawa, I te ahi nei o tira, ki oku mā reikura ki tōku taha, ko Lil, ko Janice, tīnā korua. Ko tira kia tata katoa, ko tai marunga i te ikurangi, tēnā koutou. Mai ngā hauewha, tēnā koutou katoa. How is my wairua? Very privileged to be here today, so thank you very much, Elena Te Rau Hihiri, for the invitation to come to tautoko this important kaupapa. Probably mixed in terms of just hearing Lil and Janice talk just now. Appreciate the sensitive times that we are in and the different impacts that are happening for people across the public service. But I do believe leadership is about hope. And if I have an opportunity to be able to, in some way, tautoko people in the situations that we find ourselves in, then I'm really happy to have had the invitation to come to the table, to sit around the fire for a short period of time now. So tēnā koutou katoa. Looking forward to the kōrero.
Kapai, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, he mihi aroha ki o koutou tūpuna. Look, if you've been to one of Te Rau Hihiri's events, you know that we're all about the tell it straight kōrero. So we're going to jump straight into it, e ho mā anai te tihi pātai mai te hāpori. When the agenda of government and the agenda of Māori clash, how do you navigate this as a Māori public servant? And I'm going to ask to start with your whakaro, Lil.
Kia ora. I had a very live example this morning that I thought I'd start with. Many of you based in Wellington will recognise that there's a protest being held at Parliament grounds being led by Ngāti Toa. My job over the last 3 days has been to navigate that with Ngāti Toa, the ministers and the Speaker's office. And it's a really important role for me to play so that Parliament understands what our people are trying to say and our people understand the operation of government. It's sort of a bit of a summary of the line we all walk as public servants, where we want to support our people to do what they need to and to, do the things that enrich their lives. But we also play a role in government to make sure that people understand how government works. So that's been a really important example, and I thought it was fresh, so I'd share it with you. But I think, part of the challenge for us as public servants is working out what is real and what is not. There's so much noise and there's rhetoric everywhere about what this government says and what this government thinks and what this government's doing. And I'm not saying it's not all true, but we've got to work out what is actually true. So are they really trying to get rid of te reo Māori? What is the evidence we are seeing of that, and what is the role we can play in addressing that? I myself have come to some conclusions that there's some noise around some of those things, and that's not the intent. And so I find myself in this place where working out what does clash in the first place is really important, away from the noise and the humdrum. What is it that reconciles? How do I reconcile myself personally to work on those things that clash with Māori and those that do not? I think I accepted when I took on being a public servant that this job was never going to be easy. If I wanted that sort of job, I would have signed up for something completely different. And I know, and I've always known, that this is the best place for me to help my people. There is no other place that I can be where I can help our people better. And that means I have to put up with some lumps and bumps. And I think people call it, I'm not a fair weather sailor. I want to be in the grunty hard bits, and we know that our people have come through hard bits before and we've got into better places, and I've got to believe that. That is the thing that sits with me every day. If it doesn't sit with you, if coming to work every day doesn't feel good to you, then I really want you to think about whether this is the place you should be. I want more Māori in the public service, so that's really hard for me to say. But, you know, your own personal well-being and the well-being of your whānau must come first. So I think my summary of all of that is I am where I need to be. I'm where my ancestors placed me. And that means I have to ride out some rough weather and work out what is noise and what is real. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe Lil. I can see lots of people in their support and tautoko for your whakaaro through the chat. How about you, Paula? What are your sort of reflections on some of the things that Lil shared there, in particular sort of navigating the difference between truth versus perhaps myth? And that may look and feel a little bit different, especially in some of your mahi based out in the regions out there in Kirikiriroa. So kei a koe e hoa, what's that like on the ground for you?
Hi. I think I agree with what Lil is saying in terms of separating fact from fiction, and particularly when you have the chance to be able to read into some of the issues that are being debated over the course of each and every day. But I think first and foremost, one of the things that I'm really clear about is as Māori, we have the privilege of having a dual identity. That is that we are uri from our, derived out of whakapapa, and we live and breathe that every single day, and we give expressions to that in different ways every single day. Nobody can take that away from you. So being able to find ways to express that and to be able to be that each and every day is really important for us. That shows up in different ways. Could be the way that you speak, the way that you feel, your tikanga, how you do things each and every day. That's something that we live and breathe. So, never losing sight of that, I think is really, really important. The other part is that in my mahi that I do each day, as with Lil and all of us here online, we will get the chance to be able to come and work as part of the public service. And, there's an honour in that, and there is a real privilege in being able to do that. And that does mean that we find ourselves in spaces where we are having to work through particular issues to be able to serve the government of the day. Being able to think about those things in different ways, it both has, it has opportunities, but it also has challenges. But I think being clear I try and think about that, being clear in my mind who I am, how I show up, and how do I see that as both a strength to be able to who I am as uri of my whakapapa, how I show that up in my mahi, I think is something that I see that as a real strength in being able to do that. So, in these times, being able to stay professional, turning up, doing your best every single day, I think is something that I keep in the front of my mind, but never losing sight of who I am and where I come from.
Apai, kia ora, Juan. I love Ben's comments. Two identities, but one is temporary, the other is permanent. So me mai pōtai Māori i ngā wā katoa. Hey, Janice, just over to you, because Lil just raised a really recent example of the protest led by Ngāti Toa today around the fast track approvals bill, and we actually caught sight of Taku Pārai and a gorgeous group of taiohi getting ready to head over to Parliament just before we jumped online today. When the PSAs asked Janice by kaimahi Māori and agencies about whether they can attend protests and their role, as Paula said, as uri ki te tuatahi, what kind of advice does the PSA provide kaimahi Māori?
Everybody has a right to protest. In terms of taking time off, you have to seek approval from your employer. If it's during the lunch hour, most of the protests are being held, I believe, are during people's lunch breaks. They're able to do it. It's when you bring the public service into disrepute, or your employer, if you're speaking out against your employer, that can be a problem. So we always say to our members, attend the rally, protest if you've got banners. We had one last week on May Day, and we're out the front of Mayland Park in terms of public servants going out there and other unions to protest about in terms of the job cuts, the funding cuts, and also the devastation in terms of people finding that they're being made redundant. So we've got over 3,000 jobs that are actually across the public service that have been declared disestablished by this government. And we're very concerned. So that's the evidence that you're faced with, our members are faced with, and it's about how we manage that. And we don't want to what we want to do is not bring about more anxiety for those members, but how we can support them through this process.
Ka pai, tēnā koe. He pātai tuarua, he whakaaro. I'm feeling very vulnerable being a Māori public servant. Do you have any advice about keeping ourselves culturally safe in the tari and on the marae? And if you've been following social media lately, you would have seen a number of threads perhaps floating around where often as kaimahi Māori working in crown spaces, where we're often called out quite a bit about our role in the mahi that we do. So just keen to hear some whakaaro on keeping ourselves safe, be it in the tari. We know that we want to be he Māori, not te Māori, but also on the marae or with our whānau. So Paula, I might pass to you to kick us off e hoa.
Kia ora, Raina. I thought this was an interesting question because I kind of think about it in two parts, because you've talked about keeping yourself safe in terms of your mahi, and then keeping yourself safe in terms of on the marae. And I wasn't quite sure whether it was on the marae in the capacity as a public servant.
I think why don't we use that as a use case?
Oh, okay, all right.
It does happen often for our kaimahi. They're representing their tari, their agency, often in the capacity as uri.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that one of the things that I thought, and that what I've seen across the public service, and certainly in with Te Whene Kōkiri, is that people are very take the role of being a good employer really seriously. And the supports that are available from within the organisation, whether it's through third-party supports or just within your teams and with your people leaders and so forth, it's important that we utilise those supports that are available there, because what it does is it also provides perspective. And going back to the previous kōrero that we have around separating fact from fiction and what it is that is actually being, addressed or discussed at that particular point in time. So I think, seeking support out within your own workspaces is really important. Similarly, I hear time and time again of people who, take the chance to sort of step out of the day-to-day mahi and be able to be with whānau, be within your community. That's a really important part of what I use in terms of being able to keep myself grounded, keep things in perspective around, and being able to be in my neighbourhood, working in my community. There's nothing like, thinking about you've got issues or you've got problems, and then actually you get to work alongside other people who might be your neighbours and hear about that and hear about what's going on for them. And those are actually really important grounders for what's, in our face every single day. So those are important parts. On the marae, there'll be people who are better versed than I in terms of the tikanga and what keeps yourself safe. But, that's where it's important, I reckon, to be able to draw on the teachings from your own whānau, how we do particular things, we practice particular tikanga within our whānau that help to keep us safe. And I think being able to undertake those practices is continuing to do that is very, very important. But I think what was alluded, what Lil talked about at the beginning is how you show up and in your particular roles that you're operating, and having a clear line and being very clear about what you're there to do and your role and responsibility really, I think, does help in terms of being able to navigate through different situations that you find yourself in. We're the public service, we are not the government. We're there to
Ka pai.
serve the government of the day, and I think that that's quite an important part to remember. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora Paula. I might throw over to you, Lil. We've got a comment. This idea that when you come onto the marae with your team or your agency and you have the whāinga of being a real diligent kaimahi and representing the mahi that your agency is doing, and you've been told off for being on the wrong side. And no doubt, Lil, that may have happened in the past for you. How have you held yourself in those kōrero e te rangatira, and what advice would you have for some of our younger public servants who perhaps have those sort of remarks made from some of their aunties, uncles, nannies, koros?
Kia ora, I'm smiling because I'm reminiscing about a visit we made to Pangaru with the previous Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. I'm standing on the side of the Crown and my aunties are going, come over here, what are you doing over there? So I know exactly what you're talking about. And then I've got ministers of the Crown going, you can go on that side if you want. Because we know this is home for you. But the thing is, I'm really clear before I even go home what I'm going home for. If it's a work kaupapa, then that's what I'm there for, and I'm really clear about that with my whānau, and I'm proud to be part of that kaupapa because I've got to have pride in what I do, otherwise why am I doing it? And if it's a home kaupapa, then I know exactly where I'm going to be. I mean, I jokingly say to my aunties, oh no, they're paying me today, auntie. I can't come on your side. And that tends to ease a lot of the tension. But, I know that people are feeling a little bit unsafe at the moment. And my advice, being someone who I know all of my staff really well, if they are feeling unsafe, I want them to tell me. They don't have to tell their manager. They don't have to tell their director. They can just tell me. And I need to know what they need to feel safe. What is it that you want from me to help you to feel safe? And express what safety looks like for you. I think that's important. Some of your managers won't know. I know what safety looks like because I grew up safe. But I think some of your managers and your directors, they won't know what safety means to you. And so it will take a little bit of education. Seek guidance from people. I call some of our matua around Poneke. I ring home if I'm ever feeling uncertain and making sure that I'm getting the guidance that I need. And so sometimes that guidance can't come from your work. Sometimes that guidance has to come from, for me, it's my father. Sometimes his directives are a little bit hard to follow, but I follow them nonetheless. So that's how I would manage it.
Oh, beautiful whakaaro, Lil. Thank you for sharing some of your personal fixes, personal kind of strategies that you use, and awesome for you to also acknowledge that for many managers across different public service organisations, this is a journey. And so neat reminder to kind of reach out to tuakana who perhaps have more sympathetic managers or sympathy themselves to help guide some of our taina when they're presented with those challenges. Janice, I wonder if I can pass this pātai on to you, Ehua. I've just been told I've been made redundant. What advice can you give me about what to do next? And I guess, we have to acknowledge every day, it seems we're hearing of more and more change programs being dropped, being announced, jobs being cut. And I guess what I'm wondering from the PSA's perspective is, what are you hearing from some of our kaimahi who have been made redundant, especially if, for example, where they're feeling that that perhaps isn't fair? What sort of things are they coming to the PSA, and what sort of advice have you got for them, Ehua?
Oh, kia ora, Elena. Yeah, we get a number of calls every day about people feeling really vulnerable out there about in terms of their jobs either being disestablished or changed. And so part of the advice is that PSA usually, what we normally get involved by employers writing to us. So that's in the collective agreement where there's management of change, or there's an announcement about redundancies. We usually, in terms of the public service, will be formally written to, and then we'll meet with the employer to actually talk about the process And usually that's outlined in the collective agreement. But I think I'd be more worried. We get phone calls about, should I take redundancy? I really like the job that I've got. Are there any other options? And so there's a process that we ask employers to follow in terms of what are the job opportunities, which is normally done. But we know firsthand that usually that there's going to be a change process. And then we can meet with our members. So the PSA will be involved, organisers are on site. If you haven't, if you've been approached by your manager, it's really unusual. If you as an individual, it's usually it's usually a workplace announcement, and then they will bring individuals into a meeting. But I'd say if you need support, you should ring the PSA. You should find out who your delegates are and talk to them in the first instance. If it's a cultural issue, you can ring the PSA, and we've got Marcia Puru, who's actually support and Marshall Tangaroa that can support our Māori members through any change process as well. When I say that from a cultural perspective, because our people don't normally want to talk to anybody else, and if they do, if it's about, I'm not sure about this process, what does this actually mean for me? I'm concerned about the Māori specialist roles that have been disestablished, because they're our engine and they make things work. And I want to know who's going to provide the advice across the public service if those roles are disestablished. So this is some of the things that we're involved in at the moment. So yes, my advice is contact your delegate, contact your local organiser, and you can even email me.
Tēnā koe hoa. Thank you for that offer. Lil, I just want to hoki atu ki a koe hoa. We've had a follow-up pārtai to your advice from our last one around how might we, in terms of those conversations, managing upline to your managers, how would you suggest that people approach those with managers who are perhaps earlier on their journey around I feel unsafe? What's your advice there, Hoa?
Yeah, so I think either informally take a moment, ask them for a moment and go into a room because I think often they will feel embarrassed. That's not your problem, that's theirs. But I think to make the kōrero more fruitful for you, ask them for a moment or set up a meeting with them formally. I think be as specific as you absolutely can about what it is that is making you feel unsafe. What is the action? Is it a piece of work? And then how is it making you feel? And I know that's really hard to dig underneath and say, well, this is how that's making me feel. And then I think the really important part is be really specific about what you need them to do to address the safety issue. You don't need to point out that it's their employer responsibility. They should know that. But I think address it in that way first. That's how I like to be approached, as in a way where we're solving a problem together. And then I think if you're not getting any joy, then you need to move through a process of saying, actually, it is your employer responsibility. But I think I'd start at that level and assume that they want to help you, because it's hard to find people that don't actually want to help you. But that's how I'd approach it. So hopefully that's helpful.
Kapai, thanks, Lil. So I guess we know that for many of our hoa, facing into an uncertain future, being made redundant and perhaps your role being changed and thinking that this perhaps isn't for me, we cast our sights forward out to the next matariki and think about, next steps and new options. And I wonder if, Paula, you might kick us off with, especially off the back of, maybe there not being as many Māori specialist roles in agencies now as there have been perhaps over the last 2 terms of government. What would you suggest, El Hoa, are a few of the sort of top skills that Māori public servants could be putting out there on their CV to put their best foot forward in an uncertain market at this time?
Thanks, Elena. I'd written down some things around, how you have a fit for purpose public service for Aotearoa New Zealand that serves all people, I think is really, really important. And the strengths that people might have from their roles is really good to amplify. I don't think you can get away from just some of the basic things around being optimistic, having a professional attitude, turning up, being able to turn up every day to do your best, your quality work. Aha ko te kaupapa, those are all really important attributes that I think remain really important, regardless of what situation we find ourselves in. On a personal note, I know that there are a number, colleagues who are taking the opportunity to think about the things you touched on it yourself earlier, around what it is that they want to do, and how do they make the best out of the skills that they bring. So, I think some of those attributes remain really, really important to working, whether it's in the public service or doing things that contribute to serving our people. That those sorts of things remain really important for us.
Pai, pehe e te atu whakaro leo. What sort of top 3 skills do you reckon we should be putting out there and holding on to as our unique superpowers as Māori in the public service?
I actually came up with 5, and it's the 5 that I look for. I don't really look at CVs for degrees and things like that because I don't have a degree, so why would I look for that? I look for people that say they are good problem solvers. I look for people that say that they are savvy in understanding relationships. So they call that political savvy, I suppose. I do look for an understanding of the machinery of government and how it works in terms of ministers and cabinet. I look for good written skills because that's really important. That's what got me into the public service. I could write. There wasn't much else I could do, but I could write and express myself. And then I think the one that is really important at the moment is probably engagement. The ability to engage with a different range of people, particularly our people. I think that skill is we are so short of that skill. I watch the many mistakes we make across the public service when we're going to engage with our people. And some of them are just little things. But when you don't understand who you're engaging with, it's really hard to know how to engage. So those are my sort of top 5. In terms of what I would look for if anyone wants to come work here.
Oh, ka pai. You heard it here, guys. Head up low after the hui for a job at Te Arawhiti. No, ka pai. I've got another pātai that's come through, and I'm going to go back to you, Lil, and then we'll go through everybody. Ewa, why do you choose to stay in the public service when the government continues to underperform for Māori and resist fully stepping into being a partner to Māori? So pe o whakaro I pāna ki tēnā.
Yeah, great question, great pātai. I think I answer it like this. What else am I going to do? I get to a point sometimes where I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall. Not often, because I'm a bit of a Pollyanna, and I always like to see the positive side and the good things. But sometimes I think I just hit that point and I go, well, what else am I going to do? My husband said to me one day when I was feeling a bit like that, he said, oh, what are you going to do? Have a cry? And I went, well, maybe. And he goes, and then what? He goes, you're going to get back up and you're going to go at it again. So as I said, I decided, or it was decided for me a long time ago, that this is where I'm going to be in the rough waters as well. This is where I can make the most difference. As much steps as we sometimes take backwards, I see forward steps. And it's really important for me to clock those forward steps. When I think about where we were 10 years ago and where we are now, I can clock the positive things that have happened. And yep, we've taken some steps back sometimes, but we've always been able to move forward from them. And I think as long as I can see that, As long as I can see the difference I and we make, then it's the place I need to be.
Tēnā koe e kōkiri ki mua. He tāpiri, Paula?
I think you having the optimistic view of the possibilities of the future. That's what keeps me here. It's the challenge of, it's the, you know, I always think about our greatest opportunity from who we are is to be able to exercise the thing that is between our two ears, our brain and our thinking, the issues that we get to be involved in every single day. Is really, really exciting, and I couldn't think of a better place to be than to be part of helping to problem solve, helping to work through those kinds of you know, the things that occupy our day and our weeks. So and having the optimistic view of being able to contribute to a better future is something that I, you know, see as a huge privilege. To be able to occupy the seats that we do have. I also think, you know, we've had generations before us who have faced challenges, and they are both, you know, people from the public service, but also those people who have been servants to our people. And so within that context, I think for as long as I have the opportunity to contribute into this space, working in the public service on the mahi that we get to work on, then and the optimistic viewpoint, then I will remain here to do the things that I think are important to do for our people.
Papai, he kōrero nā hine mo ai tika tau. If not us, we have the passion and drive for our people in these spaces, then who? He whakaaro pai tērā. Kaya koe, Janice, he kōrero au?
Kia ora. I just, I think I'm really passionate about in terms of, I think we have to move fast in terms of the union movement in response to the change from government. And so one of the things that we want to ensure that we are defending every job. Members need to see the PSA being vocal about every job lost, every inch of territory. But some members may choose, and they may choose to take redundancies, and unions must continue loudly to protest about the role disestablishment. We also need to build a movement defending the rights, opposing cuts will throw up new activists, but we also want to recruit them. We want people to come forward to say, yes, we want to be part of this movement. It is about upholding te tiriti of Waitangi. We want a strong in our position and unapologetically supporting Māori members and upholding te tiriti. We need to continue our advocacy to keep Māori dedicated roles, including Māori leadership roles, across the public service to deliver for our Māori communities. We are going to, we've got another 2.5 years, and so we're going to be highly visible. We're going to be proactive in the media. We're going to be campaigning. We are staunch, and we will start the position that every job we will defend and all existing terms and conditions will be protected and enhanced. We've worked too hard, like kia toi poto, the ethnic pay gender gap, pay equity, mana wahine. We believe that those things count, and those are some of the most vulnerable workers, like CPS workers, community public services that work out there in the communities. We did a really good job over their pay equity settlements. We could do more, but we want to ensure that, we want to make sure that members know that we are going to continue to fight for better terms and conditions, but in terms of retaining what we have. So that's the positive aspect of, in terms of the silver lining for us. We're not going anywhere, and we would suggest anyone that isn't a member to join the PSA. We have Ngā Toa Whena Runanga, which are made up of all the delegates across the public service. They are representatives. So, yeah, more than happy to speak to people after this as well. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe te rangatira, and thank you so much for sharing the drive and the passion that the PSA continues to have and having our backs. And so it's great to be reminded of that. E te whānau, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our hui. I do want to apologise again for the delay in starting. Something tells me we could have thrown another log on the fire to keep us warm whilst continuing to kōrero with these beautiful rangatira. Heoi, I know I speak on behalf of our whānau who have joined the hui topa today, and thanking each of our rangatira for your openness and willingness to share whakaaro with us. I know some of the pātai meant you needed to walk the line between being a public servant and being Māori carefully, but we appreciate you drawing on your personal experiences, your funny stories, your strategies, your resilience, and your vulnerability. E ngā rangatira, nei rā te pē ki mihi ki au koutou, I tō koutou ngā kaunui, ki te kaupapa nei, nei nā koutou I whakatūwhera tō whatumanua ki te tautoko, me te whakapakari ai I te hāpori. Nō reira, e ngā maraikura, kei te mihi, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. He mihi hoki ki te whānau o iPans I tō tautoko mai ki a koe Courtney, nei rā te mihi aroha ki a koe e hoa. Kia koutou katoa te whānau I hono mai, nei rā te mihi kia koutou I roto I te ngākau mahaki, no mātou te Rau Hihiri te Waimārie e. Kia tū teitei, kia tū hāngai, maia kia tō tiki tiki, tō mana tuku iho no mua rā anō. We would love to connect with you all Āti Nana at He Māori Ahau, an event to uplift and support Māori working in and with the public service to succeed as Māori. Brought to you by Te Rau Hihiri and backed by Mana Whenua, He Māori Ahau happens on the 26th of June during the week of Puanga and Matariki here in Poneke at Tākina. A link to the event and tickets will be dropped in the chat. Our early bird tickets are almost sold out at Te Iwi, so no mai, hara mai, we would love to see you there. Me whakakapi tēnei hui mā te karakia. Unuhia, unuhia. Unuhia ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua I te aratakatā. Ko ia rā e rongo whakairi ake ki runga, kia tīna, tīna. Haumi e hui e, tae ki e. Ka kite te whānau.